Reese's book club celebrated its 100th pick this September, and I thought I would share my experience with you to take part in the party. I will be going through all the 22 club reads I have done, as well as the books I didn't finish, and probably, maybe, some TBR books as well. Reese's book club has been a huge helper in my own journey from transitioning to adult literature, and I consider many of these books some of the best books I have ever read. The club has also been a door to women's fiction for me, and I love it for that. All in all, I'm a big fan. So let's jump straight into the 22 I have read. I consider myself not a specialist, but I think I do have a decent amount of experience to be sharing with you guys today. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I honestly can't believe how many of these super famous books have been originally Reese's book club picks. TJR has nowadays such a well-established place in the book community that it's really hard to remember the time before that. Daisy is of course a very unique story written in drama format, where an interviewer records the stories of band members of this cult rock band, Daisy Jones and the Six. It's so believable that after you're done reading, you want to go and Google the stats of the band, and then you get confused because of course you find nothing. It's so well done, and I love it. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This one was one of the first ones I read from the club, like officially knowing that this is now a Reese's book club pick. Little Fires is a story about two families and how their lives intertwine and what a mess follows. It discusses class and curiosity gone too far, and how badly we tolerate those who are different to us. I remember reading this one when we were on our summer cabin with some friends, and I was exhausted, and would just lay in bed for some downtime, and one of our friends came to ask me, don't I have the fear of missing out? And I was like, no, this book is really good. Cassandra in Reverse by Holly Smell. This was very basic chick lit in many ways, but I enjoyed it so much that Cassandra was a neurodiverse protagonist. We don't see that enough in books. Cassandra tries to continue her life after a tragedy and tries to stay afloat in the dating world, but it doesn't go as planned. There's also a time traveling element in this book, which is something that I usually really enjoy. This was a lighter read, but still had a decent amount of depth to it. Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. Wow, this had an unusual timeline. The book begins when the main character witnesses her son to commit a murder, and then she ends up in a time loop where she's given a chance to stop him. I totally didn't see where the plot was going, and all the surprises totally did surprise me, which is always really good. There was also so much wisdom about love and family and sacrifices, and this one was even better than I hoped it would be. Anatomy, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. If the book is set in Edinburgh, I'm immediately intrigued. I lived there for a year and I love the city to death. Anatomy did have some of that historical charm of the old town, but it did feel a little bit unfinished to me. There were quite many plot holes, or like holes in the magic system. Even though this is not a fantasy book, there is some kind of magical elements. The book did have its moments though, and the cover is probably one of the most beautiful in the club selection. The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont. This is a novel with characters from real life, kind of a hybrid before fiction and non-fiction, and I have no idea which parts were fictional and which parts were not, but I guess that's okay. Christie Affair had some of that cozy Agatha Christie mystery ambiance. In my opinion, there was just too much stuff in the plot, too many characters, too much mess for me to even remember what the story was fully about. I think Agatha Christie runs away from her cheating husband and ends up meeting with somebody she has a mystery connection with. but I really can't remember for sure. The Group by Christie. This one is a rare non-fiction pick of the club, and I loved it so much. Christie gives such an authentic and transparent walk through her struggles and her experience at the group therapy that ended up saving her life. There's so much power in honesty, and the book really encourages you as a reader to try that in your own life as well. Secrets become poisonous so easily. And I love the therapist in this book and how he talks about how Christie's eating disorder is not the main problem, but the secrecy around it. Maybe Next Time by Seska Major. This is one of the most recent Reese's book club reads of mine, and I totally fell in love with it. I just talked about this in my October wrap-up, which you can go watch, but long story short, there's just so many of my favorite elements. There's a time loop, the story is set in London, there's love and growth and meaning. On the cover there's a blurb saying get your tissues ready, and I did cry, so I have to continue recommending the tissues. His Only Wife by Peace Medi. Super beautiful cover again. This was a sad story where the female main character goes into an arranged marriage with this guy whose parents are using the marriage to get him leave his other girlfriend. The female main character agrees because she really likes him, and the marriage gives her financial security and a home of her own. They all hope that after the marriage is finalized, she will be his only wife, but it doesn't go that smoothly. Though sad, the story was very believable to me and written in a beautiful way too. Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. This is such an important tool for families and couples to help them share the responsibilities of keeping a house together. I love the method so much, and we have actually used it in our household for maybe 2 or 3 years now. The central idea is that one person should be responsible of one specific chore, and that one person only. And being responsible means truly taking care of everything, from noticing the chore has to be done to planning and actually executing it. I can't recommend this book enough, and this is my go-to wedding gift to give. The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is the worst of the Reese's book club picks I have actually finished. I don't like murder mysteries where the where the victim is not revealed until the very end. And if you really want to do it that way, then you have to do it really, really well. Big Little Lies is an example of great execution of this one, but Guest List just isn't, to me at least. Everything is so slow and overly dramatic, and the murder scene is set up for so freaking long that I just lost interest before the mystery was even solved. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I think this one or Daisy is the very first Reese's book club pick I read. One of the first booktube videos I watched was Is Harris's The 10 Favorite Books of Mine, and she recommended this one in that video. I'll leave it linked below if it's still up, because I do owe a lot to that video. I had years and years long reading slump, and finding booktube and Reese's book club really changed that for good, and I'm really glad about that. Although Untamed wasn't my cup of tea, I feel like it holds a very different worldview to mine, and sometimes that makes a book just not hit to you. It still showed me the variety of books out there to choose from, and that was the first time in my early adulthood, because I found going from kids books to YA or adult books, like the transition, to be really hard. But luckily now I know that there are a lot of good books to choose from. Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. I actually just read the reread of this one, and man, it's great. It's a no plot, just vibes kind of book, and I did the first read of this maybe in 2022 or something, and I have still thought about it relatively often during these months and years that have passed. The story follows 2 women. One is a black young babysitter looking for her place in the world, and the other is a white 30-something influencer whose kids are the ones Emira, the other books after. There's just so many great observations about the millennial life in general, and also race and honesty and power. And Briar, the 3-year-old little toddler Amira is looking after, is just she melts my heart. It's a very, very good book. And I'm really sad that they have not translated it into Finnish, because most of these maybe I've read in Finnish, but such a fun age so far, just English. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I think this is a bit controversial, but I didn't like this book. It just got way too messy and just absurd to my liking. The main premise is that a white, not so successful author steals and publishes her recently deceased Asian American very successful writer colleague's script. And then there's loads of lying as she tries to get away with it. I had such high hopes for this one, but it ended up being so much darker than I thought. Nevertheless, there is a brand new Finnish translation, and I will be at least peeking how the story translated into my first language. Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. I just found about that there's gonna be a Finnish translation of this one in April. That was very exciting news, even though the book wasn't necessarily a favorite of mine. I just prefer reading in Finnish so heavily that I'm always giddy when something interesting is translated. Tom Lake is a melancholic story of an almost actress lady, now in her 50s, who is telling her life stories to her adult daughters. They are questioning why she didn't choose the glamorous life she had a chance at, and then she explains. The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. I'm not a big fan of historical fiction in general. I do love some historical fiction books, such as Lessons in Chemistry and The Help, but my love for these books has a lot more to do with everything else. The plot, the character, the writing, etc. Especially World War II stories are not my cup of tea, and Alice Network is very, very much a World War II story. It was one of the first Reese's book club reads I did, which was good because I think I enjoyed it way more than I would if I read it today for the first time. There's 2 timelines, one within the war and one several decades after, and in the later timeline there's 2 women who go out on a quest to find a 3rd woman who's missing. It was quite a well written book and really well researched too. And I actually prefer this one over the rose gold one I read after inspiring from this one. Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. Stunning cover once again. These following 2 books remind me a lot of each other. They are partly set in England, and the female main characters are trying to find their identities or their places in the world. In Dictionary of Lost Words, a daughter of one of the men writing the Oxford English Dictionary, she starts to collect these words that the men don't notice are missing. The novel is basically her life story, the women she meets and the events that take place, and it even shows the next generation in the end. And then The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. Ooh, this one is one of my favorites. This is also a multi-generational story where one of the central narrators is actually a fig tree, which is so lovely. It takes place both in modern London and 60s Cyprus, and it's just so good and unique and beautiful. My favorite character is Ada's aunt. She has some great peculiar quotes, and of course the fig tree, because I love trees. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is one of those mind-blowing books that Reese actually picked this one before it became the global phenomena it is today. At least I presume it was before. Anyway, it was years ago, and nowadays I think everybody's already ready. I just reread Crawdads over the summer, and it really just keeps getting better. The story of an orphaned marsh girl growing up with nature as her parent, mixed with the murder mystery, is the hybrid of the 21st century. Erotic stories for Punjabi widows by Balikaur Jaswal. This was a really weird story about a Punjabi community living in London. This young lady starts to teach writing to the older generation ladies, and then of course they start to write erotic stories. Her parents are also trying to get her married, and then she does fall in love with a guy, but then there's another bad guy too within the community, and I don't remember the storyline well enough because it's been years since I read it. Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. I think this is one of the only double author picks the club has done, and it felt a little weird to me to pick somebody who has already had their spotlight, but I do love Celeste Ng's books, so I'm technically not complaining. Our Missing Hearts is a story of Asian American mother and son living in a dystopian kind of future, where if you are an Asian person living in the USA, you are potentially in danger. The mother is a rebellion poet who leaves the son to live with his white father because she wants him to have a safe life. It was a quality novel with many different themes, and I definitely recommend it. And lastly, The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dale. This is so good too. I love mystery books with no violence, and this is probably the best I've read. The main character's husband disappears, leaving her with his teenage daughter, who doesn't get along with her too well. They go on a mission together to find out what happened to the father, and then secrets unfold. I must say, the last sentence of this novel is so freaking good. I had actually goosebumps when I read it the first time. Then let's move on to the DNFs. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Most of these are actually romances because I despise a poorly written romance. First of all, Cactus by Sarah Haywood. The female main character in this book was so insufferable, and the events described in such a generic way, I just couldn't finish this one. Then One Day in December by Josie Silver. This just felt so corny to me. I wish I did like it because it's a Christmas romance set in London, but I just didn't. Tokio Ever After by Emiko Jean. This was as corny as a YA book can get. I might have enjoyed it when I was a teenager though, but I'm not anymore, so I think it's past its due date for me. The Nightingale by Christie Hannah. As I said already, I'm not a big fan of World War II books, and I gave this a try but ended up not finishing. I might want to try something else by this author though. Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley-Heller and The Light We Lost by Jill Santopolo. Cheating is something I'm very much not interested in reading about, at least when it's such a central plot point as it is in both of these. Okay, those are all the ones I've actually either read as a whole or started to read, and then lastly I want to take a peek to the picks I haven't read and mention a couple that are on my wish list to get to. There are so many obviously. If I've read 22 and there's at this point 102, that leaves 80 books for me to explore on. And obviously I don't know so much about most of these, so this is just kind of reaction to the vibes, and if I do know something I will mention that too. First, there's this book called First Light Wins by Ashley Elston, and that actually is becoming out in Finnish too, so I will probably read that one as soon as I get it from the library. And then Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I've heard good things about that one. There's kind of like magical elements within this Starling House. And then there's some young housekeeper lady who gets a lot of money to look after the place. I'm not entirely sure about that. Then I would like to read The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. that's also translated to Finnish. So that's a pro. Then I would like to read maybe some other mystery or thriller. I know there's a dozen at least. I would really like to read The Chicken Sisters by KJ Del Antonia, but I'm not sure if that's in the library here. I might have to make a suggestion that they get it. The Scent Keeper by Erika Baumeister sounds really lovely. I don't know anything about it, but the name and the cover just, I don't know, intrigued me. And also The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman sounds really lovely. Okay, I think that's my review. All in all, I have to say that I truly do trust and love Reese's Book Club, and it's given me so many good recommendations that I wouldn't have get otherwise. And I think their content is just really colorful and like uplifting, and I love like popularizing literature so it's accessible to everybody. I think that's really valuable. So way to go, Reese's Book Club. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.